everyone. Episode 14, A Funeral for a Friend. And it's your boy Icon with some DC TV. And in honor of the fallen, in honor of a fallen friend, we don the black to say goodbye to Killer Frost. Or Frost. Ew! So, this is going to be a quick review because Team Flash is still feeling the effects of losing Killer Frost, of losing their friend. And despite the fact that they've lost Killer Frost and despite the fact that, they're grieving and everything, the city still needs protecting. The problem is these people are in no way, shape, or form equipped to handle the threats that's coming. Some guy rolled up in a makeshift bootleg Blockbuster suit. And I feel like Blockbuster was a character that was used a lot on Batman the Animated Series, if I'm not mistaken. And, with the whole white suit thing, but they use him on the Flash. So Team Flash shows up to try to take down Blockbuster and try to stop these metahuman threats or whatever. Well, actually, he seems more enhanced. And when they show up, it's Chester on comms, Barry shows up, Allegra shows up, Cecile shows up, and then I'm sitting here and I'm like, why the hell is Cecile here? Like the last time that I checked, Cecile didn't have any special ability or any special skill that would, like, she has emotion. She has emotion powers where she can sense people's emotion and she can tap into people's. Why is Cecile here? Like, why is Cecile at the crime scene? Why is she engaged in battle? And I like Cecile. Like, I love Cecile's character, but she don't need to be like. It's like, were you taking Frost place? Like, I don't understand. I truly don't understand why Cecile was there. But anyway, so because of that, because they're all still grieving, there's a moment where Chester's trying to coordinate the attack. And then he's just like, oh, Allegra, hit him with a UV blast. Cecile keeps standing there and Barry's running around in a circle. And then he's like, Frost, you coming from? And then he's like, oh shit, I said the F word. And then when he said Frost, that threw Allegra off. And then Allegra accidentally blew up a car. And then the Blockbuster guy had destroyed a building that had a bunch of people in it. And the people were screaming and they were crying for help. And then that ruined Cecile's power. Cecile was being overwhelmed by the emotion of the people screaming in agony. And then the Blockbuster dude looked at all of them and he was just like, yo, worst heroes ever. He's like, yeah, motherfuckers is trash. So he gets away. And I'm just like, a villain actually got away on the Flash. Like, that's something. But unfortunately, it comes with the territory after suffering a loss like this. So now we're back at Star Labs. We're back at Star Labs and everyone is just like, yo, we got our asses beat. And, Barry's talking to Iris and then he's just like, oh, we got to figure out how to move on. So Barry brings the whole team together. They have a team meeting and everybody was there except for Caitlin because they felt like, obviously due to the circumstances, Caitlin still needs to be grieving. Barry tells the team, he said, listen, I understand that we're going through it, but we all need to find a way to continue to protect this city and deal with our grief, our emotional grief at the same time. And then that's when Caitlin walked into the room and then they were just like, oh my God, Caitlin. And she was like, I didn't realize we were having a team meeting. And I was like, okay. And then he was just like, well, we thought that you could use some alone time to plan the funeral. And then she was just like, well, it doesn't matter because, like I need to be here. I need the distraction. And then Barry was just like, yeah, but he said, even then, if you still need us to do anything or have plans or help with the funeral. Then Caitlin's just like, oh, my mom is planning the funeral. So if you got a problem, take it up with her because I ain't going to no damn funeral. And then I'm looking at her like, bitch, like, I understand they cool. I understand like they're friends. I understand she's emotionally upset. But in that moment, when Caitlin speaks to Barry that way in that moment, I'm looking at Iris like, yo, so you gonna handle that? Cause she just cursed out your husband and I'm gonna need you to, I'm gonna need you to regulate. But they let her walk away. They let Katie walk away. And then now, then Joe showed up, like Joe West, like he steps in and then he basically tells everybody, he said that, listen, we all need to find ways to honor Frost in our own way and, blah, blah, blah. So now it goes into a montage of each individual character trying to mourn Killer Frost or honor Killer Frost in their own way. So we're going to speed through this real quick. Iris basically ended up writing an article that turned out to be trash because she didn't write the article. And then her way of honoring Frost was she interviewed people who Frost had saved and allowed them to tell her story about how good of a person she was and how she rescued them and saved their lives. And because of that, Jitters, who had a Killer Frost item on their menu, ended up changing it to just Frost. Allegra and Chester, the two of them were in a ridiculous argument over condiments and like over hummus and ketchup and coming up with ideas for Frost, whatever. For some reason, the two of them were charged with going down to the bar to go get Blaine because Blaine was at the bar getting drunk. and acting a fool. They brought Blaine back to Star Labs, and then the two of them are still arguing over hummus. And then that's when Blaine was just like, first of all, you're not even in a real argument. He's like, I was with Frost. I know what a real argument is. He's like, this is just puppy love bullshit. And I honestly thought in that moment, he was going to tell them to either get together already or just move on and stop playing games. But that never really got addressed. And I'm just like, that's kind of where I am with like Chester and Allegra. I'm like, either y'all doing it or y'all not doing it. But then, like I said, he spoke his piece, made them feel stupid. He passed out, and then the two of them apologized, and they decided to honor Frost by hanging up the ice blue jacket that Caitlin first started wearing when she became Killer Frost. They hung that up in the archives room with all the fallen heroes, a la Young Justice. Cecile decided to do pro bono work where she's gonna defend metahuman criminals for free. Barry took, I guess it was Frost, like her to-do list, like her checklist. Barry did all the items on her checklist, like he built a snowman on top of Mount Everest. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. He built a snowman on top of the Paramount logo, and then he put one of Frost's, like exhibits in like some French museum. He built like an ice sculpture with her logo on it. He did all the stuff, and then he was talking to Blaine, and then he was just like, and then Barry even said to Blaine, he was just like, although that I fulfilled her checklist, he said, I still don't feel fulfilled. He said, there's still something that feels like it's missing. Blaine told him, he was like, well, for Frost, it wasn't really about the fulfillment, it was about the journey. And then Barry was like, well, I got an idea, and then he went to go talk to Katie's snobby ass. So he goes to Katie's house, and then, Katie lets him in the day of the funeral. He goes to her house the day of the funeral. And then while he's at her house, he was just like, listen, like, what would Frost want you to do? And then she was still being a bitch. And then at the end, we're at the funeral. And now that we're at the funeral, this was funny. Sue Dearborn was at the funeral. And I'm just like, yeah, I really paid her just to sit there in that dress and do absolutely nothing. She didn't speak. She didn't go to the after party. She wasn't at the bar. Y'all basically just paid her just to sit like at the funeral. And it was a COVID funeral because everybody was spread out. Everybody was spread out 6 feet apart from each other. So that was funny, and then in the end, while we're all sitting there like honoring Killer Frost, then Caitlin shows up. She gives the eulogy at the funeral. And then after the funeral was over, then Team Flash went back to Joe's house, and everybody went to honor Frost and tell good stories, this, that, the third. They got an alert on the Flash phone that Blockbuster had returned, and then Team Flash was like, let's go down there and kick his ass like once and for all. Iris went to go write the report about it, and then Joe and Caitlin stayed behind to have conversation and to honor Frost some more. And then we get to the end, the Caitlin end credit scene. So then Caitlin called Blaine and had Blaine meet her at her apartment. And I was just like, I know you ain't about to smash your sister's boyfriend. And then when he gets there, he noticed that she had a device with her. He was like, he said a genome splicing machine or something. I forgot the word he used, genetic slicing machine or whatever. He goes into her apartment, and her apartment was turned into a laboratory. And then he asked her, he was like, what's all this for? And then they show a flashback scene at the funeral. When Caitlin walked over to the casket, she cut a large chunk of Frost's hair and kept it, and she's going to use that hair. And she said to Blaine, she said, I'm going to use this DNA to bring Frost back to life. Now, the fact that we're doing that, the fact that we're even going to attempt to bring Frost back to life, one, made the funeral, aside from her taking the hair sample, I feel like we went through this entire episode for nothing. We basically spent an entire episode mourning a character that's about to make a comeback, like tomorrow. So that was one problem that I had. The second problem that I have with it, and I don't understand why nobody, well, I hope someone brings this up to her at some point. And we need to, like, as Flash fans, we need to remember this. Killer Frost was a conscious being that existed inside Caitlin. And, her DNA would take over, and then she would take over. They would switch back and forth. The only reason why Killer Frost is her own person was because during the mirror season with the Mirror Master, Caitlin got blasted by the mirror gun. The mirror gun, what it was when the Mirror Master used the mirror gun and she blasted somebody with the gun, it created a mirror double of that person. And she was trying to create like mirror clones and like evil mirror clones. She shot Caitlin with the gun. The problem is, because Caitlin already had another being like living within her consciousness, when she shot Caitlin with the gun, instead of it making a mirror clone version of Caitlin, it basically pulled Killer Frost out of Caitlin and made Killer Frost her own person. If Caitlyn does this experiment to bring Killer Frost back, she is not going to be her own individual person. She's going to go back inside Katie's body, and now we're back to square one with the two of them sharing the same body. And I feel bad for Blaine because she did not tell Blaine this, and when Blaine helps her bring Killer Frost back and realizes both of them are still sharing the same body, he gonna be like, yeah, what the hell is this? Because I'm not banging Katie. Unless she has some magical, the whole lab thing, unless she has something where she can literally create a clone, like another bodied human being clone, we are basically going back to square one, and we're going back to, and I'm actually happy about this if it happens too, because I wasn't a fan of both of them being separate anyway. I liked it when Killer Frost was inside Caitlyn, and I liked when she could switch back and forth between her and Killer Frost. I wasn't happy when they split them apart, and I was waiting for them to put them back together. So me personally, I'm hoping they put them back together. But we'll see what happens. It's gonna be an interesting thing. Like I said, it's like, I mean, hell, share your questions and your thoughts down below. Do you think like she's gonna create a clone, or do you think she's gonna create her back within her consciousness, and we're gonna go back to them switching back and forth, and then Blaine gonna feel some kind of way, and then he gonna turn into the bad guy. Now, for the Iris portion of the show, towards the end, Iris was basically like, she was at CC Media, and she was having a conversation with the crazy white girl that called, that basically has it out for Allegra. The girl was just like, oh, it's good to have you back, boss, back in CC Media. And then she was just like, well, Allegra was here and she was doing perfectly fine. And she was like, girl, who told you that? So like, there's still beef here. And because we're still on this with this girl. And the girl also said, she was just like, oh, because like, we're not done with, because the girl basically told Allegra, she was like, I'm going to destroy you, bitch. So we're not done with that. This girl is going to become her enemy, and she's probably going to end up with superpowers or get a super gun or something, and she's coming for Allegra. But what's interesting to me is she said to her, we know that the Flash was working with Frost, but the Flash is also working with other people, and don't you think we need to explore who these other people are? What's going to happen is she's going to explore who the Flash is working with. She's going to find out Allegra is one of those people, and Allegra got superpowers, and the girl's going to flip her collective shit because she can't stand Allegra, or she's going to threaten to oust Allegra as a metahuman, mark my words. And then after that, because the girl had wrote the byline for the Blockbuster takedown, Team Flash took down Blockbuster once and for all, and then when the girl left Iris's office, and then she was like, bye, boss, and whatever, she came back to say something else to Iris, and then when she came back, Iris was completely gone, and the green time particles were just left in the chair. And the whole time during the episode, when we were grieving Killer Frost, and we were at the funeral and all this other stuff, I'm like, isn't Iris sick? I'm like, did we just put the time disease on hold while we mourn Killer Frost? But we're going back to the time disease now, and Iris has now fully disappeared. Dion is back in the next episode, which I don't know how, because he disappeared. And in the next episode, we're going to go somewhere in space and time to try to save Iris. And I'm down for that because I want to see where this whole thing goes with Iris West Allen and whether or not she gets the time suit going forward. So that was it. And thank you for tuning in. So a good episode of The Flash. Like I said, like the whole, I like episodes where each individual character gets their own spotlight, but I just wasn't interested in how they were mourning Frost. That was a little like anime, but like I said, the two biggest things is that Katie trying to bring her back and Iris finally disappeared. So we're gonna talk about that moving forward. And this episode 14, so I think we're getting 6 more episodes. So we'll see where this Flash journey goes and how it all ends and how it comes together, because there's no big bad in sight. So unless Ronnie come back, I don't know where we're going with this, but I'm definitely interested because I love me some Flash. Check me out on Twitter, check me out on Instagram, always on YouTube, where you can leave your questions, comments, and or concerns. Hit the notification bell, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, because right now, like I said, we're waiting for Superman and Lois to come back on the 31st. We just did the season finale of Naomi, so go check out Naomi on my channel. For you Marvel fans, I got the season finale of Moon Knight. We're also doing The Flash as always, because we're here, and we're still doing that Young Justice. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, as we honor Killer Frost until she comes back next week, I'll see you then, and we're out this bitch.